A family vanished during a storm in Pinevale Forest. When search teams found the children alive and protected, the tracks told an impossible story. Something massive had sheltered them, fed them, and guided rescuers through dangerous terrain. The Bigfoot they'd been taught to fear had saved lives, and investigators would never see the forest the same way again. The scream cut through the rain like a knife. Sarah Dalton didn't recognize her own voice. One moment she was hammering the last tent stake into muddy ground, and the next the entire hillside was moving. Not shaking, moving, sliding downward in a slow, inevitable avalanche of rock and earth. Kids! Kids! Her husband Tom's voice cracked with panic. Their daughter Emma, 9 years old, had been collecting pine cones near the treeline. Their son Luke, 7, was supposed to be by the cooler. Now both were somewhere in the chaos of snapping branches and tumbling stones. The rain intensified. What had been a drizzle an hour ago was now a wall of water, turning Pinevale Forest into a streaming, treacherous maze. Sarah's boots slipped as she lunged toward where she'd last seen Emma. The ground tilted sickeningly beneath her feet. "Mom!" Emma's voice, high and terrified, came from the right. No, the left. Sarah couldn't tell anymore. The world was a blur of rain and darkness and the horrible grinding sound of earth giving way. Then she saw her, Emma, clinging to a young pine tree that bent dangerously toward the ravine. The slope beneath the girl was crumbling, pebbles cascading into black nothing. "Hold on, baby. Hold on." Sarah scrambled forward, but her foot punched through a weak spot in the ground. She fell hard, tasting mud and copper. Tom appeared beside her, pulling her up. "I can't find Luke. Sarah, I can't." The pine tree gave a sickening crack. Emma screamed, and then something impossible happened. A shadow detached itself from the treeline. Not a shadow, a shape. Massive. Moving with purpose through the storm like the rain didn't exist. Sarah's brain couldn't process what her eyes were seeing. Too big. Too fast for something that size. The figure reached Emma just as the pine tree's roots tore free. One enormous arm, it had to be an arm, scooped the girl up as casually as someone picking up a dropped phone. Emma's scream cut off abruptly. "No!" Sarah tried to run toward them, but Tom grabbed her, both of them frozen in disbelief and terror. The creature, because what else could you call it, straightened to its full height, 8 feet, maybe 9, covered in dark, matted fur that shed water like a seal's coat. Its shoulders were impossibly broad, its head slightly conical, and even through the rain, Sarah could see its eyes reflecting their flashlight beam. Not like an animal's eyes, aware eyes. It stood there for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Emma hung limp in its arm, too shocked to struggle. The creature's massive chest rose and fell with steady breaths. It looked at Sarah and Tom with an expression that was somehow both alien and achingly familiar. Concern. Then it turned and walked. Not lumbered, not ran, but walked with deliberate care, back toward the treeline. Within moments, it had vanished into the darkness, taking their daughter with it. "Emma!" Sarah's legs finally obeyed. She crashed forward through the mud, Tom right behind her, both shouting their daughter's name into the storm. They made it 20 feet before the ground opened up completely. A section of hillside the size of a school bus simply collapsed, sliding into the ravine with a roar that drowned out even the thunder. Sarah and Tom threw themselves backward, clutching each other as trees toppled and boulders bounced past like toys. When the rumbling stopped, a fresh cliff face stood where safe ground had been seconds before. "Luke," Tom whispered. Luke was on the other side. He was... "Oh God, Sarah." He was right there. They screamed themselves hoarse, calling for both children. The rain swallowed their voices. The forest gave nothing back. At some point, Sarah would never remember when, they made it back to what remained of their campsite. The tent was gone, tumbled into the ravine. Their car was intact but useless. The access road had washed out completely. Tom tried his phone. No signal. He tried the emergency radio from their camping kit. Static. They were cut off, and their children were gone. Sarah sat in the mud, shaking, replaying those impossible seconds over and over. The way that thing had moved, the gentleness with which it had picked up Emma, despite its enormous hands, the look in its eyes. "What was that?" she whispered. Tom didn't answer. He was staring at the tree-line, flashlight beam cutting uselessly through the rain. "Tom, what the hell was that?" "I don't know." His voice was hollow. "But it took our daughter." They huddled against the car as the storm raged on, waiting for dawn, both thinking the same terrible thought. Would anyone even believe them? By morning, the rain had stopped. The forest looked savaged. Branches stripped, new gullies carved into hillsides, the air heavy with petrichor and pine sap. Tom's phone caught a single bar of signal at 6:47 a.m. The 911 dispatcher's voice crackled through. "Sir, I need you to stay calm and repeat that. Your children are missing and you saw." "What?" "Something took them," Tom said, each word careful and measured. "During the landslide. Something big. Please, we need help. We need." The signal died. But it was enough. By 8:15 a.m., a priority alert reached the Pinevale Ranger Station. Family emergency. 2 children missing. Possible animal attack. Immediate response required. What the dispatcher didn't include, what she'd quietly edited out before forwarding the report, was Tom's description of the animal. Some things she decided were better left unsaid. At least until someone else saw it too. Raina Moss arrived at the Pinevale Ranger Station at 9:03 a.m., still wearing yesterday's clothes. She'd been halfway through her morning coffee when the volunteer alert hit her phone. Missing children. Experience trackers needed. She hadn't even locked her front door. The station was chaos. Rangers shouted coordinates into radios. Someone was arguing about drone coverage. A German shepherd barked impatiently near the equipment lockers. "You Raina Moss?" A man in his 50s, wire-rimmed glasses, canvas vest stuffed with instruments, turned to face her. "Dr. Marcus Halcombe. I'm leading this search." "Biologist?" Raina asked, noting the university logo on his vest. "Wildlife ecologist. Also the only person within 50 miles with mountain rescue certification and a functioning brain." He thrust a topographic map at her. "The Dalton family. Parents are safe, traumatized, barely coherent. 2 kids still missing: Emma, 9, and Luke, 7. Last seen during a landslide near Sector 7". Raina studied the map. Sector 7 was deep forest, unstable terrain even in good weather. After last night's storm, nightmare fuel. "Parents mentioned an animal," Halcombe continued, his voice dropping. "Something large. They're in shock, probably saw a bear." Minds filled in the rest. "We focus on the children, not folklore nonsense." Folklore. The word hung in the air like gun smoke. What did they actually say? Raina pressed. Halcombe's jaw tightened. "Doesn't matter. 2 kids are out there. That's what matters." He handed her a radio. "You'll sweep the eastern quadrant with Davies. Look for any signs: clothing, footprints, disturbed ground. Terrain's a mess after the storm, so watch for sinkholes." Raina nodded, but something in Halcombe's voice bothered her. The way he'd said folklore, not dismissive but careful, like he was convincing himself. The trailhead was 40 minutes away by jeep. Raina rode with Davies, a quiet ranger who chain-smoked and spoke in grunts. The access road was worse than she'd feared, washed out in 3 places, requiring detours through service paths barely wide enough for the vehicle. When they finally parked, the forest hit her like a living thing. Dense, ancient, the kind of wilderness that reminded you humans were guests, not landlords. They found the Dalton campsite within 20 minutes. Or what was left of it. The ravine had swallowed half the clearing. Fresh earth scars marked where the hillside had collapsed, creating a chaotic landscape of exposed roots and scattered boulders. Jesus, Davies Mutered. Lucky the parents made it. Raina was already scanning the ground. Her father had taught her tracking before she could read. Every bent blade of grass told a story. But this was a violent mess of mud and debris. She worked outward in expanding circles, methodical, patient. Then she saw it. Davies. The sneaker was small, pink with cartoon stars. It sat on top of a moss-covered boulder like someone had placed it there deliberately. Not thrown. Not dropped. Placed. No move. No scratches. Pristine except for being wet. That's the girl's shoe, Davies said, reaching for his radio. Wait, Raina crouched beside the boulder. Look, next to the sneaker pressed deep into the soft earth. A footprint. Davies went pale. That's not possible. The print was humanoid, 5 toes, an arch, a heel. But it measured at least 16 inches long and 8 inches wide. The depth suggested weight far beyond any human, pressed so deep that water had pooled in the depression. Raina's hand trembled as she photographed it. She'd seen bear prints. Elk. Mountain lion. This was none of those. This was bipedal. Get Halcom, she said quietly. Now. Dr. Halcom arrived with 2 other rangers, a photographer, and barely controlled fury. Don't contaminate the scene, he snapped, pushing past Raina. He knelt beside the print, pulled out calipers, measured twice, then stood abruptly. Well? Davies asked. Halcom's face had gone gray. Preserve this. Full documentation. No one talks about what they saw here outside this team. Understood. What is it? Raina demanded. It's our search perimeter expanding north, Halcom said flatly. That's what it is. The children moved this direction. We follow. But Raina caught something in his eyes. Something that hadn't been there at the station. Fear. Not fear of the unknown. Fear of something he recognized. As the team prepared to move deeper into the forest, Raina photographed the sneaker one more time. A child's shoe, carefully positioned where searchers would find it. Like a breadcrumb, like a message. The forest suddenly felt less empty. Somewhere in those trees, something enormous was watching. Something that had taken 2 children in the middle of a storm. The question that made Raina's skin crawl. Why were they leading the search deeper instead of away? Dusk came early to Pinevale Forest, swallowed by fog that rolled through the ravines like living smoke. Raina's legs burned. They'd been hiking for 6 hours, following a trail that shouldn't exist. Broken branches at precise intervals, stones stacked in small cairns, all pointing north toward the deepest part of the forest. This is deliberate, she'd told Halcom 3 times. He'd ignored her 3 times. Now they stood at the ravine edge, the same chasm that had nearly killed the Dalton parents. 40 feet across, maybe 80 feet deep, with a creek churning at the bottom. The fog made it impossible to see the other side clearly. We should head back, Davies said, checking his watch. Losing light. Halcom raised his hand for silence. His head tilted, listening. That's when Raina heard it too. Breathing. Not panting. Not the harsh gasps of an injured animal. Just slow, rhythmic breaths. Deep. Powerful. Like standing near a sleeping horse, but heavier. More present. The sound came from across the ravine. Tell me you hear that, Raina whispered. Davies had his hand on his sidearm. Halcom had gone perfectly still, his binoculars already raised. The fog shifted, and there he was. Raina's brain stuttered, trying to process the impossible geometry of the figure moving through the mist. 9 feet tall, minimum. Shoulders that would barely fit through a doorway. Fur the color of wet bark, shaggy and thick, covering a frame that suggested pure muscle beneath. But what froze her wasn't the size. It was the grace. The creature crossed the ravine using a fallen log bridge that Raina hadn't even noticed, placing each foot with careful precision, weight distributed perfectly. In one arm, cradled against its chest like something precious, was Emma Dalton. The girl's blonde hair was visible even through the fog. She wasn't struggling. Oh my God! Davies breathed. The creature reached the far side and stepped onto solid ground. It paused, seeming to sense their presence. Its head turned broad, conical, distinctly unhuman but not quite ape-like either. Even from 60 feet away, Raina saw its eyes catch the last of the daylight. Amber, intelligent, calm. It looked directly at them for 3 heartbeats. Then it knelt, this massive thing knelt, and placed Emma gently on a patch of soft moss. One enormous hand, easily twice the size of a catcher's mitt, patted her head once. The gesture was so tender, so deliberately careful, that Raina felt tears prick her eyes. The girl looked up at the creature, said something they couldn't hear. The creature made a sound, not a growl, but a low rumble that might have been reassurance. Then it stood and walked backward into the fog, never turning away from the child. Not running, not hiding, retreating, like it had accomplished exactly what it intended. "Emma!" Halcom's shout shattered the moment. The fog swallowed the creature completely. By the time they scrambled around the ravine, a 15-minute detour that felt like hours, Emma was exactly where she'd been left, sitting on the moss, knees pulled to her chest. Raina reached her first, dropping to her knees. "Sweetie, are you hurt? Are you okay?" Emma looked up with eyes too old for 9 years. Not traumatized. Processing. "He didn't want the rocks to hit me," she said simply. "Who, honey? Who didn't want?" "The big one. When the ground was breaking, he picked me up." Emma's voice was steady, matter-of-fact. "He carried me away from the loud parts. Then he showed me a place to sleep where the rain couldn't come in." Halcom was on his radio, voice shaking. "We have the Dalton girl. Sector 9, North Ravine. She's alive." "Repeat." "Emma Dalton is alive and—" He paused, looking at the child. "Appears unharmed." Davies wrapped Emma in an emergency blanket. Raina stayed close, watching the girl's face. "Emma, do you know where your brother is?" The girl nodded. "Luke's okay. The big one put him somewhere warm. He showed me, but then it got dark." She looked toward the fog. "He's not scary. He smells like trees and dirt, but not bad. And his hands are really soft, even though they're big." "Soft," Raina repeated. "Like he's careful not to hurt things." Emma tilted her head. "Why are grown-ups so scared?" "He's helping." No one answered. As they started the hike back, Raina glanced over her shoulder. The fog had thickened, turning the forest into a wall of gray. But she felt it, that sensation of being watched by something that could vanish between one breath and the next. Something that had just returned a missing child without a scratch on her. Halcom walked ahead, typing furiously on his phone. Raina caught a glimpse of his screen. Academic journals, reference photos, databases. He knew what this was. He'd known all along. Day 3 dawned clear and cold. The kind of morning that made the previous storm feel like a fever dream. Except Emma Dalton was real, sleeping safely in the ranger station's medical room. And her story, repeated to 3 different interviewers with unsettling consistency, was real too. Raina stood in the briefing room, surrounded by topographic maps covered in red markers. Each marker represented something the overnight teams had found. None of it made sense. All of it was deliberate. Here, Ranger Kowalski pointed to a cluster of marks. Tree branches, bent upward and tied with vine. 27 of them forming a line heading northeast. Here, another ranger, Chun, tapped a different area. Stacked stones, not natural formations, arranged, creating what looks like. She hesitated. Arrows. Halcom stood at the center of the chaos, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the fluorescent lights. He looked like he hadn't slept. He probably hadn't. "There's more," he said quietly. "Show them the photos." Chun pulled up images on the laptop. Mud prints, the same massive footprints from before, but arranged in specific patterns. Not random wandering paths. Each one led around sinkholes, away from unstable slopes, toward safe passages through the terrain. "It's a map," Raina said, the realization hitting her like cold water. "He's drawing us a map." "He," Davies scoffed. "We're talking about an animal that—" "Animals don't bend 27 branches in a straight line." Raina cut him off. "Animals don't stack stones. And they sure as hell don't arrange footprints to mark safe routes." She looked at Halcom. "You know what this is?" The room went silent. Halcom removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. In 1967, a man named Roger Patterson filmed something in Northern California. For 57 years, People have debated whether it was real or fake. I've spent the last 30 years trying to answer that question. He looked up. I think we just got our answer. You're saying Bigfoot took the Dalton kids, Davies said flatly. I'm saying a highly intelligent bipedal primate, species unknown, has taken them somewhere safe and is actively guiding us to their location. Halcom's hands shook as he pointed to the map. Every marker we've found has been placed in the last 48 hours, during and after the storm. This isn't random. This is communication. Raina felt goosebumps rise on her arms. If he wanted to help, why not just bring them back? Maybe he doesn't trust us, Chin offered quietly. Maybe he's making sure we're worthy of finding them. Or maybe, Raina thought, he's protecting them from something worse. By noon, they were deep in Sector 12, following the markers like Hansel and Gretel in reverse. Every bent branch led them true. Every stone arrow pointed toward gentler slopes. Raina walked beside Emma, who'd insisted on coming despite protests. The girl seemed different now, calmer, but also more aware. She stopped occasionally, head tilted, as if listening to something the adults couldn't hear. Emma, Raina said gently, what did he show you when you were together? How to drink from the clean streams, the ones that don't make your tummy hurt. Emma pointed to a cluster of berries growing on a low bush. Those are okay. The red ones with the white spots aren't. He taught you which berries were safe. Emma nodded. He showed me by eating one first, then giving me one. Then he pointed at the bad ones and shook his head really big. Like this, she demonstrated an exaggerated head shake. Raina's throat tightened. The creature wasn't just protecting the children. It was teaching them survival. Did he seem angry? Dangerous? No, Emma's answer was immediate. He seemed, she searched for the word, worried. Like when Mom worries about me crossing the street alone. Ahead, Halcom had stopped at a massive oak tree. Carved into the bark, no, not carved, scraped with something hard, was a symbol. A simple arrow pointing upward, then curving to the right. This is fresh, Halcom said, running his fingers over the marks. Maybe 3 hours old. He knows we're following, Chin breathed. He's counting on it, Raina corrected. They followed the arrow's direction. The path led them through a narrow gap between two cliff faces that Raina would have missed entirely. On the other side, the forest opened into a small valley protected from wind, carpeted with soft pine needles. And there, at the valley's edge, was a waterfall feeding into a crystal-clear pool. Beside the pool, another sneaker, Luke's, size 2, red with Velcro straps. And beside the sneaker, berries, at least 2 dozen, arranged in a neat pile on a flat rock. He's feeding them, Halcom whispered, his voice cracking. Wherever they are, he's keeping them fed. Emma walked to the pool, knelt and drank. The water's good here, she announced. Raina looked at the surrounding trees, feeling that familiar pressure of being watched. Somewhere in that dense green, something massive and impossibly gentle was monitoring their progress, guiding them home. We're close, she said. He's bringing us to Luke. The rocky overhang appeared just before sunset, hidden behind a curtain of hanging moss and wild grapevines. Raina almost walked past it. Would have if Emma hadn't stopped dead in her tracks and pointed. There, the girl said. That's the kind of place he likes. Halcom pushed aside the vines, and everyone went still. The entrance was wide, 8 feet across, maybe 10 feet high, just large enough. Scratches marked the stone edges, worn smooth by repeated passage. Something big used this route regularly. Stay behind me, Davies ordered, flashlight raised, hand on his weapon. No guns, Halcom said sharply. Absolutely not. If you see him, you do not shoot. Davies started to argue, but the look on Halcom's face stopped him cold. They entered single file. The cave opened into a natural chamber about the size of a 2-car garage, the ceiling dome-shaped and surprisingly high. Gray daylight filtered through cracks in the rock above, creating columns of dusty illumination. But what stopped Raina's breath wasn't the cave itself. It was what was in it. The fire pit sat in the center, a ring of stones containing ash and charred wood. Not scattered randomly. Arranged. The heat coming off it indicated it had been burning recently, maybe an hour ago. Woven branches formed a structure against the far wall. Not randomly piled. Layered. Like bedding. Like someone had deliberately created something soft to sleep on. Dried moss and leaves filled the gaps, and atop it all was a ranger-issue emergency blanket. One of theirs, taken from the Dalton campsite. Fresh berries sat in neat piles on flat stones. 3 different types, carefully separated. Jesus Christ, Shane whispered. It's a shelter. Halcom moved slowly through the space, cataloging everything with trembling hands. The fire pit's sophisticated. Look, there's a draft channel carved into the floor, leading to that crack in the ceiling. Ventilation. Whoever built this understood fire management. Whoever, Davies said. You mean whatever? No, Halcom said softly, kneeling beside the bedding. I mean whoever. This level of planning, problem-solving, he ran his hand over the woven branches. This is tool use, abstract thinking, environmental manipulation. This is... A sound stopped him. Breathing. Small, quiet breathing. Coming from deeper in the cave. Raina moved first, rounding a natural stone pillar. Behind it, tucked into an alcove lined with dry reeds and soft pine needles, was Luke Dalton. The 7-year-old boy was asleep, curled on his side, covered by what looked like woven bark sheets. His face was smudged with dirt but peaceful. His chest rose and fell with the deep, even breaths of exhausted sleep. Luke, Raina whispered, kneeling beside him. Luke, honey, wake up. The boy's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion crossed his face. Then he saw the adults and smiled. Not relief but simple recognition. Hi, he said, yawning. Did the big one send you? Sweetie, we're here to take you home. Your parents are so worried. But it's not safe yet. Luke sat up, completely calm. He said the ground is still angry. We have to wait until it sleeps. Halcom crouched beside Raina. Luke, who said that? The big one. The boy nodded. He doesn't talk like us, but he shows me things. Like... Luke made a rumbling sound in his throat, then mimicked lifting something heavy. That means he's moving rocks so the storm water can't come in. He did that all night when it was raining hard. Emma had entered the cave now, rushing to her brother. They hugged, and Raina felt her eyes burn. He's been taking care of you? She asked gently. Yeah. He brought me here after the ground broke. I was scared, but he put his hand on my head. Luke demonstrated, placing his palm on his own head. And he made this sound like humming but deeper. It made me feel better. Davies was photographing everything, his skepticism visibly cracking. Kid, you're telling us this. This thing hummed you a lullaby? Not a song, Luke corrected seriously. Like when you're sad and someone pats your back. It was like that, but with sounds. Chun had found something near the fire pit. A log, positioned deliberately. Scratch marks covered one end. She showed it to Halcom. Tool, he said immediately. He used this to dig the drainage channel. Look. The ends worn down from friction against stone. Raina stood, scanning the cave with new eyes. This wasn't just shelter. This was care. Thought. Planning. Where is he now? She asked Luke. The boy pointed toward the cave entrance. He goes out to check things. Makes sure the bad slopes aren't moving. He always comes back, though. He brought fresh water this morning. Luke gestured to a hollowed-out piece of wood serving as a crude bowl, filled with clear water. Luke, Halcom's voice shook. Did he hurt you at all? Even by accident? No. He's really gentle. His hands are huge, but he's super careful. Luke looked at the adults with confusion. Why does everyone think he's scary? He's just big. Just big. From a 7-year-old's mouth, it sounded so simple. Raina walked to the cave entrance, looking out at the darkening forest. Somewhere out there, something was watching, waiting, making sure they found what he wanted them to find. We need to move, Davies said. Get the kids back to base before dark. But Raina wondered, what if he's not done showing us things yet? Day 4 brought helicopters. Raina heard them before dawn, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump cutting through morning mist. She stood outside the ranger station, coffee steaming in her hands, and watched 3 aircraft circle the forest like mechanical vultures. Inside, Halcom was shouting into a phone. "Don't care what headquarters wants. Those children were protected, not kidnapped. If you send armed teams in there—" He listened, his face going red. "Proof? I have a 7-year-old boy who was taught basic survival. I have a shelter that demonstrates tool use and fire management. I have." The phone went silent. He'd been hung up on. "They're sending wildlife control," he said to the room, "with tranquilizer rifles and thermal imaging. They want it captured or neutralized." "Neutralized?" Chun repeated, her voice hollow. Raina felt sick. "When?" "Teams arrive at noon. They're setting up on the old logging road, cutting off the Northern Territory." Halcom slumped into a chair. "They think I've lost objectivity. Called me compromised by discovery fever." "You want to protect it," Davies said carefully. "I want to understand it," Halcom snapped. "Do you realize what this means? A species this intelligent, this socially sophisticated, living undetected in North American forests. This changes everything we know about primate evolution, about whether we're alone," Raina finished quietly. The room fell silent. Emma appeared in the doorway, still wearing the borrowed ranger clothes that swallowed her small frame. "He'll know they're coming." Everyone turned. "Honey, how would he—" Chun started. "He always knows. He knew you were following his signs. He knew when to move us." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact. "He hears things we don't." Luke joined his sister, nodding. "And he smells things. He smelled the rain coming before the sky got dark." Raina knelt in front of them. "If the helicopters scare him, he might run. We might lose track of your parents." "Mom and Dad are okay," Luke interrupted. "The big one took them to the high place. He showed me with stones. 2 big ones and 2 small ones, all together on flat ground." Halcom leaned forward. "Luke, when did he show you this?" "Last night, before he left the cave." "He's still moving them," Raina breathed. "Still protecting them from something." "From unstable ground," Halcom said, pulling up geological surveys on his laptop. "Look, the entire western slope is compromised. After that storm, we've had 12 secondary landslides. He's not hiding them. He's keeping them away from danger zones until it's safe." Davies shook his head. "Or he's territorial and doesn't want humans in his area." "Then why the breadcrumbs?" Chen challenged. "Why lead us anywhere?" The question hung unanswered. By 10 a.m., Raina was back in the forest with Halcom and a skeleton crew. They'd gone rogue, ignoring orders to wait for the tactical teams, following the markers one last time. The old logging road cut through the forest like a scar. Overgrown but still visible, it wound northeast toward the high ridges. That's where they saw him. Thermal cameras caught the signature first, a massive heat bloom moving diagonally through the trees. Then visual confirmation. The creature, broad-chested and powerful, navigating fallen logs with careful precision. He was heading toward the logging road, toward them. "He's coming this way," Davies whispered, raising his camera. But the creature stopped 50 yards out, partially obscured by a massive cedar. Even at that distance, Raina could see the detail. A scarred left shoulder, old and healed. Fur that was actually multiple shades, brown, gray, auburn, creating natural camouflage. And those eyes, amber and alert, locked directly on their position. He never looked away. "He's not running," Halcom said, wonder creeping into his voice. "He knows we see him." The creature stood there for 20 seconds. Raina realized she'd stopped breathing. Then, with deliberate slowness, it reached out and pushed against a dead tree. The trunk, easily 60 feet tall, groaned and toppled, crashing across the logging road in a cloud of dust and broken branches. Before anyone could react, 2 more trees fell. Then 3 more. "He's blocking the road," Chen said, stunned. But Raina saw the pattern. The fallen trees didn't create a random barrier. They created a path, a single clear route threading between the obstacles, leading northeast, away from the western slope, away from the unstable areas, toward safe ground. "He's not blocking us," she said softly. "He's directing us." The creature watched until they understood. Then, without hurry, without fear, he turned and walked deeper into the forest, not fleeing, simply leaving, his massive form disappearing between the trees like smoke. In the distance, helicopters thundered closer. Halcom looked at Reyna. He planned this, days ago. He knew humans would come with vehicles and weapons, so he prepared. "A safe route," Reyna finished. "One we can follow. One that keeps everyone away from danger." Including himself, Davies added quietly. They stared at the deliberately arranged fallen trees. A message written in timber and weight and impossible foresight. "This way. Trust me. I'll show you. We have maybe 30 minutes before the tactical teams arrive," Halcom said. "If we're going to find the Daltons first." Reyna was already moving, following the path the creature had built. The path led them higher than Reyna expected. Every fallen tree had been positioned to create natural steps up the steep terrain. Every cleared section of trail avoided loose scree and unstable soil. Whoever, whatever, had done this understood not just the forest but human limitations. "He built this for us?" Chen panted, pulling herself over a log. "Specifically for us." Halcom didn't respond. He was too busy documenting everything with his camera, his hands shaking with exhaustion or excitement or both. The helicopters sounded distant now, circling the wrong area. The tactical teams would be hours behind, cutting through the blocked logging road. They had a window, maybe their only one. The cedar grove appeared without warning. One moment they were climbing through dense mixed forest, and the next they emerged into a clearing dominated by ancient cedars. Massive trees with trunks 20 feet around, their canopies so thick overhead that the storm 3 days ago might never have happened here. The ground was carpeted with soft needles. A small spring bubbled from rocks at the far edge, feeding a clear pool. And there, sitting beside the pool on flat stones, were Tom and Sarah Dalton. "Oh my God!" Sarah's voice cracked. She struggled to stand, and Reyna saw why. Her ankle was wrapped in what looked like strips of bark, bound with vine. A splint. Crude but effective. Tom was already moving, limping slightly, his face gaunt with exhaustion and relief. "The kids, please tell me." "They're safe," Halcom said quickly. "Emma and Luke are both fine, back at the ranger station." Sarah collapsed, sobbing. Tom caught her, and they held each other like drowning people clutching driftwood. Reyna gave them a moment, then approached carefully. "Mr. and Mrs. Dalton, we need to know what happened. All of it." Tom looked up, his eyes haunted. "You won't believe us." "Try us," Davies said quietly. They sat by the spring while the Daltons spoke, their story tumbling out in overlapping fragments. The landslide had separated them from both children instantly. They tried to follow, but the ground kept giving way. Tom had fallen hard, gashing his leg. Sarah had twisted her ankle badly in a hidden hole. "We couldn't walk," Sarah said. "We were trying to crawl, calling for Emma and Luke. And then, he was just there," Tom finished. This massive thing standing over us in the rain. I thought we were dead. I really did." "What did he do?" Reyna asked gently. Sarah's voice broke. "He helped us up, both of us, one at a time. He lifted me like I weighed nothing, carried me to higher ground, then went back for Tom." "He wasn't rough?" Halcom leaned forward. "Wasn't aggressive?" "No." Tom shook his head firmly. "He was careful. When my leg was bleeding, God, this sounds insane, he brought me moss, clean moss, pressed it against the wound. Then Tom demonstrated, putting his hand on his own chest, then pointing at Tom. Like he was asking if I was okay. "We stayed there that night," Sarah continued. "We were terrified, but also, he brought us water in this hollowed-out piece of bark. And berries. He'd eat one first, then offer them to us, showing us they were safe. Chun was writing frantically. Davies had stopped looking skeptical. The next day, Tom said, the ground started shifting again. Secondary slides. He heard them before we did. His head snapped up and he made the sound like a rumble. Then he moved us. Not dragged. Guided. One hand on each of our backs, pushing us gently but firmly uphill. Every time we tried to go a different direction, trying to find the kids, he'd block us, Sarah added. Not violently. He'd just stand in the way and shake his head. Exactly like Emma said he did with the berries. He knew the safe routes, Raina said. It wasn't a question. He knew everything, Tom said. Where to step, which slopes were stable, where water was clean. When my leg got worse yesterday, he made this splint. He gestured to his calf, wrapped similarly to Sarah's ankle. Used his teeth to strip the bark. His teeth, gentle as a surgeon. Halcom was openly crying now. Did he ever try to communicate? Beyond gestures. Sounds, Sarah said. Different rumbles meant different things. One was like reassurance. One was warning. And once, her voice caught. Once, when I was crying about the kids, he sat down next to me. This giant thing just sat there. And he made this sound, so low I felt it in my chest more than heard it. It was, she searched for words. It was kind. Raina looked around the grove. Fresh berries sat on stones. The spring was clear and accessible. The cedars protected from wind and rain. He brought you here, she said, to the safest place he knew. And then he led us here to find you. Where is he now? Davies asked. As if in answer, a sound echoed through the grove. Not a roar, not a howl. A long, low call, mournful and deep, rolling through the forest like distant thunder. Emma had been right. It wasn't scary. It sounded like goodbye. Tom stared into the trees. He's leaving, isn't he? Because of us. Because of what's coming, Halcom said quietly, glancing at the sky where helicopters still circled. He knows. The call came once more, farther away now, fading into the vast green silence. The Dalton family was safe. The rescue was complete. But Raina felt no victory, only loss. They'd been given a gift, a glimpse of something extraordinary. And in return, they'd brought noise and fear and guns to his home. We should go, she said softly, before the teams get here. No one moved for a long moment, all of them listening to the forest, hoping for one more sound. But the creature was gone. 3 weeks later, Raina stood in the county clerk's office, reading the official report for the third time. Search and rescue operation, Dalton family incident. For individuals recovered safely following landslide displacement. Cause of survival, natural shelter formation, accessible water sources, and unknown assistance. No conclusive evidence of wildlife involvement. Case closed. Unknown assistance. 2 words doing the heavy lifting of an impossible truth. She signed the acknowledgement form and left, driving straight past the turnoff to her apartment. Her truck knew where it wanted to go. The Pinevale Ranger Station was quieter now. The helicopters were gone. The tactical teams had packed up after finding nothing, just some unusual tracks, some arranged stones they attributed to geological coincidence, and a lot of wasted taxpayer money. Halcom's office was empty. Of course it was. He's on administrative leave, Chun said, appearing behind Raina with 2 coffee cups. She handed one over. Pending psychological evaluation. Apparently obsessing over cryptids means you're unfit for field work. That's bullshit. That's bureaucracy. Chun sipped her coffee. His documentation was confiscated. Every photo, every measurement, every sample. Inconclusive evidence requiring further analysis, which means it's sitting in a warehouse somewhere, getting buried under paperwork. Raina felt anger burn in her chest. He was right. About everything. I know Chun looked tired. Davies knows. Half the search team knows. But knowing and saying are different things. What about the Daltons? Sticking to the official story. Can't blame them. Who'd believe the truth? Chun paused. Emma draws pictures, though. Her therapist is concerned. Says the girl draws the same figure over and over. Big, gentle. Bringing her family berries. Raina closed her eyes. Is she okay? Define okay. She's not traumatized. She's not scared. She just misses Chun trailed off. She misses her friend. Raina drove to Pinevale Forest alone, parking at the trailhead as afternoon light turned golden. She carried a backpack heavier than necessary for a day hike. The forest felt different now. Not threatening. Aware. She followed the old markers, most already fading. The bent branches were springing back. Rain had smoothed the arranged stones. Nature was reclaiming what had been briefly interrupted. The cedar grove looked exactly as they'd left it. Sacred. Untouched.
Raina unpakket her bag carefully.
Fresh apples, organic, the good kind. A jar of honey from the local farmer's market. Polished river stones she'd collected from the creek near her house. Smooth and pleasant to hold. And a framed photograph. The search team, all of them, the day after the rescue. Smiling. Whole. She arranged everything on the flat rocks by the spring. Not as an offering that felt transactional. As a thank you. As acknowledgement between two species who'd found each other in crisis. I don't know if you understand this, she said to the empty grove. But those children are safe because of you. That family is whole because of you. Her voice cracked. You didn't have to help. You could have hidden. But you didn't. The forest listened. They're going to keep looking, you know. Halcom might be sidelined, but others will come. People with cameras and guns and ideas about what you are. What you should be. Raina wiped her eyes. I hope you stay hidden. I hope you stay safe. She stood to leave, then paused. Emma says you're not scary. Luke says you're gentle. I believe them. She looked at the trees. I hope you know we're not all. That's some of us. The words tangled. How do you apologize for your species? She left the grove, hiking back in the fading light. Behind her, the gifts sat in the clearing, bright against the dark earth. Raina returned to the grove 4 more times over the next month. Each visit, the previous offerings were gone. Apples eaten, honey jar licked clean, stones nowhere to be seen. On her 5th visit, she found something new. A circle of river stones, her stones, the ones she'd brought, arranged in perfect symmetry. In the center, a single blackberry, so fresh it was still slightly warm from the sun. Her breath caught. She looked around the grove, scanning the trees, searching shadows. Are you here? No answer. Just birdsong and wind through cedars. But the arrangement was deliberate, purposeful, a response crafted with care. I see you. I understand. We are both trying. Raina knelt and placed her hand in the center of the stone circle, next to the berry. The ground was warm, solid, real. She stayed there for a long time, sitting in that sacred space, understanding that some stories don't get neat endings. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, just witnessed, respected. When she finally left, she took only the berry, eating it slowly on the walk back. It was sweet, perfect. Behind her, the forest breathed. Somewhere in those ancient trees, something massive and impossibly gentle watched her go. Not with menace, with recognition. 2 species, separated by millions of years of evolution, connected by a single storm and a family's survival. Meeting in the space between myth and truth, where the extraordinary becomes simply real. Raina never told anyone about the stone circle. Some things were too precious for reports, too sacred for documentation. But she returned every month, always with gifts, always alone. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, she'd find a new arrangement waiting, a conversation without words, an understanding that transcended species, proof that in the deepest forests, where humans rarely venture and nature holds its secrets close, we are not the only ones capable of compassion. We are not the only ones who choose kindness. We are simply the only ones who forget that we share this world. The end.